Good evening, Niner faithful. Welcome. It is post Super Bowl Monday. The season is officially over. We are on to 2022. And after today's episode, we can stop reliving any trauma from the 49. I'm just kidding. We'll relive a lot of trauma throughout the offseason. It's just the way in which we do it. But I'm thrilled to have my co-host here tonight, special guest Jason Aponte of the Sprint Right Option podcast. Jason, welcome back to the program. How are you doing this fine Super Bowl, post-Super Bowl Monday, whatever the hell you want to call it?
Right. I'm good, man. Good to be here with you. We took a week off, obviously, because of what was going on. But
Yep.
yeah, it's
Needed to process it. Needed to process.
that. And right now, for me, it's a lot of, okay, now what? Now what do I do with myself? And that's the stuff that I've been coping with today, this morning, is that there is no actual football now, and we are going to have to actually earn our label as content creators, because now's the fun part. The team's not just feeding it to us anymore by playing football.
No, they are not adding very many storylines. It is a process of coming up with those stories, getting creative at times, finding outside content, finding outside interviews, attending Senior Bowl practices, right? We do those things in order to keep ourselves busy. That's a teaser of something that is to come. But first, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the potential first rounder for Jimmy Garoppolo. Just when you thought that a second rounder was too rich to get in return for Jimmy Garoppolo, now we have a report of a potential first rounder in return. So for those of you that were hiding under a rock or just not watching football this weekend because you were too traumatized by what happened the week prior, the news came out, and this is so remarkable for me that the NFL has created this season-long, year-long news cycle, and that even on Super Bowl Sunday, when the storyline should be primarily focused on two remaining teams, no, the NFL brings in these existing storylines with little breadcrumbs to leave a trail for other fans to follow. And they did so with the San Francisco 49ers, coming out with the report that the Washington, an executive from the Washington Commanders has said that while he may not be worth a first-round pick, that it might be that the Commanders are willing to give up a first-round pick this particular offseason because of the lack of options elsewhere. Jason, what do you make of the report?
I think this is just one report of many that's going to continue as well. It's in the realm of possibilities, the range of outcomes, but it doesn't feel likely. And I think I'm pointing at the way that it was phrased. An exec can justify getting,
Right.
moving a first round pick.
Right.
Wasn't necessarily, this is what they can acquire. If you just read the quote and just break it down that way, it's from a reputable source. The Athletic is, not really stirring people the wrong way. It's not something that's just gotten legs off of some internet rumor. But there's two ways to look at this. The one is, I don't think that that's very likely, even though it could happen. But I do think that it speaks more about this idea that Jimmy Garoppolo has no value. And that's the thing, is I was at Mobile. You start to look around the league. What are your realistic options? And Jimmy Garoppolo's play doesn't have to necessarily raise his value. The market can do that itself when you start to paint the pictures of realistically where guys can go. Like, you have to take Tampa Bay off the board. Tampa Bay is not interested in Jimmy Garoppolo. Never will be. That just won't work. Bruce Arians would never sign off on that. So that's one that's out. Stop floating that one out there. That would never work. Ever, ever, ever. Bruce Arians is literally not going to change his offense just for Jimmy Garoppolo. Right. That's why the two names that just came out this weekend, Deshaun Watson, Russell Wilson, makes 100%. That is actually what they should be looking at. And if they get desperate, back to Jameis Winston. He would do that again 100% before he would do Jimmy Garoppolo.
No risk it, no biscuit. That's just yeah.
So on 3rd and 7, when Jimmy Garoppolo throws it 5 yards and gets tackled and they have to punt, Bruce Arians is going to eat his golf hat. Like, that's not how they're going to run that offense. It doesn't fit. So now it's at a point where people said, well, we don't know what you can get for Jimmy Garoppolo, but the market could dictate more because of the place that you're in. You kind of let the market set itself. Russell Wilson goes here. This guy goes here. This guy goes here. And then that list of teams is whittled down. And when you're looking for a bridge stopgap quarterback who can win games, that's where Jimmy Garoppolo comes in. And then that's when the market and his value will raise a little bit more. So it's two ways that you can look at this quote.
I agree. And I do think in order to get to this point where you're talking about a first rounder, you would need two teams that are both caught up in this idea of winning games now, that they're sort of bridging toward the future, but a high quality bridge, a more structurally reinforced bridge, not just your standard foot bridge getting from one quarterback to the next, because you're going to be investing quite a bit into this particular bridge. He comes with a hefty salary for next season, and the only way that you're going to get that into a manageable salary cap number is by extending that deal and committing to Jimmy Garoppolo for a couple of years going forward. So to me, it will come down to a couple of these teams in the Washington Commanders, Indianapolis Colts, Pittsburgh Steelers realm, where the rest of the team is built to win now, getting into a bidding war. And even then, I'm just not so sure that I see a first rounder coming back. If you had to take a stab at the compensation the 49ers get in return for Jimmy Garoppolo, do you have an idea in mind of what you believe that package will entail?
I mean, you just mentioned the Indianapolis Colts, and I think that is something that is very tangible. The thing is that they've sent so much for Carson Wentz. So now what can they realistically send to the 49ers? I mean, for me, you can just send DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, and Quentin Nelson, and that would be fair. And then you can have Jimmy Garoppolo, man. I mean, I think that works out perfectly.
Who says no to that, Jason? Who says no to that, in all honesty?
The NFL salary cap probably and Roger Goodell, but yeah, but no. So
every
again,
Colts fan in existence, the entire organization. Yeah, everybody says no to that.
Best case would be what was reported in the middle of the season in that Sam Wickersham book about a second and a fifth. You take that and you run with it. I think at this point, maybe a third and a player, and that like the least you can get is a third, right? And if you can somehow get a second from someone, then boom, you take that and you run with it. But a third and a player or a second and a fifth, I'm with that. I'm with either of those things.
Me too. And I've been saying for a while my prediction would be a second, a fourth. So I am slightly more optimistic. But again, anytime you've got a second on the table, you take that, you run, you dump that salary. That's just the way I got to look at it. All right. In transitioning to the next topic, just wanted to get to a few of the folks that are here in the comments as well. Silent Seth came in before we even started, just commiserating about the fact that it could have been us. In a previous comment, he talks about we could have made it there with any of the last three quarterbacks that won over the three previous years. Mary Lou's coming in, wanting to talk about the run game going forward, talking about redemption for the 49ers. I like that because it's shifting to positivity. Ellis 10 just coming in to say what's up. Karthik coming in to say what's up. We've got, let's see here. Mark is excited for our next topic. One or two topics from now. Whole lot of Senior Bowl talk now, baby. Yes, indeed there is. And we're going to get to that in just a moment. We've got Rob Smith coming in as the newest member of the channel. Much appreciated. And that Niner guy coming in with the super chat. Niners need to send him to a team with a coach on the hot seat. Washington, Carolina, maybe Indianapolis. That's where Jimmy's value can get better. 1 and Niners add 3. That is interesting for the 49ers to send out a draft pick in that hope of bringing back in the first rounder. To me, again, I don't think the Niners get that first, even sending out that pick. But those flexible ways of creating creativity may be what it takes for the 49ers to package this thing and get back what they want.
Washington has pick 11. That's a high pick. I mean, think about what the 49ers sent for Trey Lance, and they would find a way to be in the top 15. I mean, that would be an absolute steal. I mean, I'm not trying to shoot it down completely, but, that's best case scenario, in my opinion.
I agree. I tend to think that the Niners need to send out probably their second rounder in order to entice a team to give them back a first. I would do that. I think getting back into that first round, getting that fifth-year option gives a team incredible flexibility and puts them at a point where they can get that higher impact player. But I just don't think that if you're talking Jimmy Garoppolo by himself, I just don't think he has that type of a price tag on him, barring the bidding war potential. All right, let's transition to that next topic of just general overall impressions of the game. What did you walk away from that Super Bowl thinking, Jason? Were you thrilled with the quality of football that we saw on the field? Was it the end result you were looking for?
I mean, I thought the Rams were going to win. I mean, it was all lining up for them. It feels like the Bengals are a little bit early, and if they get an offensive line, then they're really going to be something to reckon with. So, I mean, they're not done. The Bengals are not done. They have nothing to be ashamed of. But yeah, I expected the Rams to win. I mean, it felt like whoever was going to win that NFC Championship game was going to win the championship. Sorry, guys, but that's just how it felt. And I'm really happy for Odell Beckham. I'm really happy
Yes.
for Matthew Stafford.
Yes.
And it comes full circle. The 49ers flirt with Matthew Stafford, lose out to Stafford to the Rams, and then he eliminates them and he wins his first championship, moving away from the Detroit Lions, proving that he's not Stat Padford. Because I remember all of those comments, and you guys got to walk all of that back now. He's a Super Bowl champion. So if you walked away after that game still saying, well, he was padding his stats, yeah, I want to show you that no-look throw that basically probably won them the game and put them in position to do it. And if Patrick Mahomes did it, everyone would be falling all over themselves. So good for Matthew Stafford. That's it. That's all the goodwill I have for the Rams now. You won your championship, good. Next year, it's back on, and I don't care. Never win again.
Back on. I love it. I also feel good for Matthew Stafford. What do you make of all the rumors now? Rumors and speculation circulating for the Rams. Certainly you have rumors speculating about Sean McVay retiring. You have rumors about Aaron Donald retiring. And then you just have speculation about, key free agents. Odell Beckham Jr., Von Miller. This thing was put together for a one-year run. Had they fallen to the Bengals, it would have been chaotic. People would have trashed them. It didn't. They won it all. They did exactly what they set out to do. Now, even if it all falls apart, they can say they were justified in their pursuit of it. But what do you make of these rumors as they're coming out? Do you believe any of these players step away? Do you think that the Rams fall into shambles next season, or do they hold it all together and try for another run?
The Rams are the perfect example of there's a different way to cook a meal for everybody, right? If the meal still is what it is, but you just went a different way about it. And it's so funny because a lot of 49er fans said, well, they have no picks and they're mortgaging in the future. But then those same 49er fans will look you in the face and say that the draft's a crapshoot. So what the Rams do is they eliminate that crapshoot and they trade it for known commodities. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? I understand the whole idea of, yeah, you want rookies, you want guys you develop, you want to be able to pay them for low, but can you argue with the results? No, you can't. So there's two different ways to build rosters. They just had a completely different philosophy. So that in that way, the Sean McVay thing kind of had a little bit more legs for me because it seemed like he's all in to get a championship and either necessarily was going to walk away from the Rams or all of it, right? Like he wanted to be vindicated and have the one championship. I kind of felt that vibe a little bit earlier on in the year when they were just like, let's get this guy, let's do this, let's trade those draft picks. Like their general manager has a mug that says F those picks. Like it's so funny. But you can't argue with that. There's different ways to build rosters. So in the same way that everybody talks about, well, the draft, you miss on some, you win on some. Well, they are taking that risk out and they had put it to actual known commodities that are plug and play. And what is wrong with that? Just because they went about it doesn't mean that everybody should go about it that way, but you can't argue with the results because the same people that you'll say, like, I'll say, man, you drafted Jalen Hurd and you didn't draft Terry McLaurin. Well, you miss on some of those guys. Well, that's the point, is you take away. You're not missing now on those guys because you know who they are. And that's the thing that I'll say. But I don't know. The McVay stuff, I think he comes back. I don't see why he wouldn't. It didn't seem like, anything like that. The Aaron Donald thing kind of came out of nowhere. We have seen players walk away, and now he's won a championship. So this could be the place where he can ride off into the sunset. Who knows if he has other aspirations? Who knows if he wants to keep putting his body through the rigors of football? And that's what people don't understand. So, they're going to lose some guys. Maybe Odell wants to come back because of the time that he had there. It was very clear that game started to switch when he left the game because they had behind him was not ready. The kid from Notre Dame, not ready. He was the reason for one of the interceptions. Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, but they sorely missed Robert Woods in this game. They sorely missed Odell Beckham when he left. So I think they make that work. But the way that they've constructed their roster is like stars and scrubs and just fill it in, right? Like that's not ideal, but they won a championship. So what are you going to say about that?
Right. It worked. And that's all they need to say in order to back up their reasoning for going about it in that way. And you touched on it. It's just a different way of going about it. The salary cap, people say the salary cap isn't real. The salary cap is very, very real. But all that means that it's real means that there is a certain set of rules in place that you must operate within. But within those rules, you can do whatever the hell you want. As long as you operate within the rules, you have your choice of asset allocation in roster construction. And the way in which the Rams went about it was simply a non-traditional way of spending those assets. But again, when you achieve the end result that you set out to get, it backs up your course of action. And to me, you can no longer criticize the Rams for pushing all their chips into the middle of the table, because they took home the biggest pot at the end of the frickin' day. And that's what it's all about in this league. So I tend to agree. I'm not really worried about the McVay and Aaron Donald thing. I will say this about Aaron Donald is that if you're not serious about it, it was a mistake to float that out there, because you will really only get one shot to take a storybook John Elway right off into the sunset type of a retirement. And if you pass on it, karma has a funny way of repaying you. Like, if you throw that out there as well, I want to go out on top, and then you don't go out, it's over, pal. You're not getting back to that. Like, odds are against you in that. I think the free agency thing, Von Miller has made it clear he's going to test free agency. With Odell Beckham Jr., it'll be interesting to see whether he was honest about having found a home there in LA and re-signs before getting healthy, or if he uses this as an opportunity to wait as far as signing that next deal and heal, and then potentially come back and join a contender late next season. I secretly still want him with the San Francisco 49ers. I just can't let go of OBJ. He's just, especially after that Debo connection at the NFC Championship game. I love that.
Yeah, I'm biased. On the East Coast, he was lighting it up over here with the Giants, but I took a flight back from New Orleans one time that he was on, so I got a chance to speak with him at baggage claim. He took a picture with me, so I'm always biased, and I'm always, I loved him as a player before, but after that, gave me a little bit of time and talked with me. Man, Odell is always somebody that I root for, so I was very happy for him. Also, breaking this whole narrative that he was somehow washed up. I love it,
right?
Man. And you can go back to blaming Baker Mayfield now.
Yeah, yes you can. Yes you can. George coming in. Poor Odell tore his ACL again. Felt bad for him, as did I. Very bad for him. Glad he got a ring, though. The tears of joy, as he already knows what's going on. Like, that did illustrate that all the pain you go through to get there, even if you lost out in that last moment of being a part of that second half, I'm sure that he still feels all that pain, all that struggle was worth it to get to that point in his career.
Yeah, those were tears of joy, and he knew what was going on with his knee, and he knows what's going to happen. But the Super Bowl win makes it a lot more sweet, and he also contributed. It wasn't like he was just out there ceremonial. Like, he caught a touchdown pass, and he would have had made way more.
Yes, no doubt. Sean951 is opposed, saying OBJ on ACL number 2. He's done. Like we always speak about, don't want hurt players. I agree that we have to be cautious of it. I will use this as a point to say, I retweeted it yesterday. The NFL has got to go to all grass. To me, it is ridiculous that there is still turf within the league. You are a league that is capable of getting to all grass. It reduces lower leg injuries. To me, it's just a non-starter. And it was infuriating that the Rams built that multi-billion-dollar beautiful stadium and didn't do the Arizona thing where you can cart in and out the real grass. It's such a shame in my book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, MetLife Stadium and what the 49ers went through last year, and just players are more vocal about it too. So yeah,
no doubt.
I'm gutted for him, man.
Me too. You saw Kittle pushing that message out there. All right, flipping it over to look at the Bengals. Just in talking a little bit about, it seems the Bengals pursuing the Andrew Luck strategy of attempting to get Joe Burrow killed early in his career. Just throwing it out there. This was Nick Jacob via Twitter putting out these stats. But Andrew Luck in his first couple of seasons, 80 sacks in 35 games. Joe Burrow, 102 sacks in 30 games. Luck had 4 more years after that before he called it a career. So this one is, can the Bengals build up that offensive line and get Joe Burrow back to this point? Or are we going to see another Andrew Luck type scenario, David Carr type scenario, where he just gets destroyed by not having that offensive line?
And, a lot of people didn't like the pick with Chase, but I mean, you can't argue with the results and what they had. They had the rapport and everything. And I think their thought process was, we'll get Chase. They'll have a lot of quick routes. We'll get that ball out of his hand, and we'll just get Chase in spots where he can make plays. But, you definitely don't want your guy taking that many hits. So I feel like they'll address it, in the draft or however, but they have to do something. Otherwise, he's not going to be there for long. Just stinks, man. That team was very fun to watch. The game was good. They had their chance right there. And then some calls at the end kind of shifted things after everybody kept their flags in their pockets for like the entire game, especially like when T. Higgins ripped Jalen Ramsey's face mask away for like that touchdown. So if you're gonna let him play, then let him play the whole game. Don't just change it up in the last 2 minutes. So I'll say that about the NFL officiating. I mean, you really couldn't complain if they're consistent the entire game. You can't complain, right? Like if they weren't calling it early, don't call it late.
Totally agree. I'm not going to say that the refs were responsible for any outcome. And I will reiterate what you just said there. If you are going to call a game one way for 58 minutes, then you damn well better sure continue calling it that way for the last 2 minutes. It's the inconsistency that drives people crazy. If you don't call something the entire game, great. That's how you were officiating it. But to switch in the way in which they did as the game got tight, it just left a bad taste in my mouth, that's for sure. And go ahead.
No, I can equate it to like a baseball umpire, right? Like if you're going to give the outside corner and that other batter's box, then do it on both sides. Like don't change and don't start squeezing. Like it's get everybody accustomed to how the game's going to be played. Everybody knows how they can play and what they need to do, and then you make your adjustments. But yeah, it felt like in the last 2 minutes that whole strategy went out the window, or at least that style of officiating.
It's crazy. And just to put a pin in this topic before switching back to the other quarterback, I mean, Joe Burrow, you have to get him protection. He took 51 sacks in the regular season, an additional 51 hits on top of that. And then he was sacked 19 times, an NFL record in the postseason. And the previous record for most times sacked was 14, which is a full 26% less. And that was Wade Wilson of the Minnesota Vikings in 1987. It's wild that the Bengals got as far as they did without protecting their quarterback. But if we switch it back to the other side and just ask a quick question about Matthew Stafford, does this win get him in? Talking about the NFL Hall of Fame. Is this enough for you when you combine it with the rest of his seasons in Detroit, where he wasn't able to get any type of postseason accolades, but certainly put up considerable stats in the regular season?
Absolutely, man. I mean, there's going to be Hall of Fame quarterbacks who have never won a championship that are going to get in. Like Phillip Rivers is going to get in. He never won anything. I mean, It's just, again, it's the body of work. It's everything. It's all the circumstances. And if you needed a championship to make that happen, then now you really can't argue it. Eli Manning's going to get in, right? Like, he doesn't necessarily have the best numbers, but he has 2 Super Bowls. He has 2 Super Bowl MVPs, big ones. And that's something that's going to get him in. So and the bar is incredibly low right now for the Hall of Fame. There's plenty of people that are in that were great players. Hall of Good, sometimes definitely not Hall of Fame. And but in this day and age, the throws this season, 1 year away with somebody who actually can call plays for him, and look, they make the Super Bowl and they win it. So yeah, I mean, it would be harder to make the case if he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he won a Super Bowl, so now you really have to deal with it. I really don't see how he doesn't get in at this point.
I have to agree. I looked back on it, especially after Richard Sherman's comments on this. It does seem that Sherman is indicating that, Matthew Stafford would be the beneficiary of this low bar that currently exists in getting players into the Hall of Fame. But when I look back, statistically speaking, and you have to look at statistics for some quarterbacks. For example, you cannot say that Dan Marino wasn't a phenomenal arm talent within the NFL, and he only made it to and lost 1 Super Bowl, right? You just can't look at championships and the number of rings as the end all be all. They're a complementary stat to everything else. You got to take the whole picture. So when I looked at it, to me, 10 seasons with 16 or more games for Matthew Stafford, his lowest yardage output in those 10 complete seasons of 16 games or more was 3,777 yards. That was the lowest. Every other season, 9 out of those 10 seasons with 16 or more games, over 4,000 yards. He had one season where he was above 5,000 yards, right? And that was early on in his career. He's 5 yards shy of 50,000 passing yards total. To me, when you add all that up, yes, it was debatable before he had this ring. Now that you throw in the ring, to me, that seems like a pretty clear-cut case for a Hall of Fame caliber quarterback.
For sure. Absolutely. There's going to be plenty of guys, like you mentioned, like Dan Marino, who have never sniffed a bowl or anything like that, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't get in there. And it's tough because there's guys who have compiled stats that are going to get in because they compile stats, but they're not better than certain guys, right? Like, it's weird. Like, we all love Frank Gore, right? We all love Frank Gore. Frank Gore is going to be a Hall of Famer one day.
Yes.
But he has more rushing yards than Barry Sanders. What does that mean? That doesn't mean that Frank Gore is better than Barry Sanders. No. And both of those guys will get in. So a lot of context needs to be viewed. You have to remember the situation he was in. Detroit's I just mentioned Barry Sanders is pretty notorious for having guys walk away because they would rather not play football anymore than play there. And Stafford made it out, and he compiled all those stats over there, and now he has a Super Bowl. I mean, it's really it feels open and shut at this point.
He made it out. That's a good way of putting it. Silent Seth coming in. Stafford was a Hall of Famer before he even won a ring. The ring just solidified it. I tend to agree, although I'm not sure he would have gotten in quite as quickly without the ring. Texas Niner coming in at Rob. And don't forget, he's a Texas boy. Yes, he is. All right, Sean 951 coming in about Stafford as well, but I think this is making the other side of the case. At Rob Schuh, Stafford has yards every season because he's throwing a pick and getting behind, so he has to throw almost every down. He is the arsonist. Couldn't win at all in Detroit with
nobody can win in Detroit, Sean. I'm sorry, man. It is a wasteland. Nobody would want to go play there ever. And remember, Matthew Stafford had a record for how many starts he had in which he hadn't had a 100-yard rusher. It was like a disgusting streak. The Detroit Lions are an absolute dysfunctional franchise, and having Calvin Johnson does not mean that you're going to win the Super Bowl. You still have to play defense on the other end. So that one gets thrown out for me. The whole Detroit thing, he made it out, and yeah, he's in. And look, Stafford, while he makes mind-boggling interceptions and throws, he still willed them out of those things and won those games. Like, he was leading the world in game-winning drives. How many of those were because his defense couldn't stop a nosebleed and he had to literally throw them into the game and they couldn't even run the ball? And when everybody – and this was without Megatron. Like, I'm not talking about the years that he was there. When Megatron left, he still was doing things like this. So, yeah, I feel like that argument doesn't hold up in my opinion. He's definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to think he is open to that criticism, that it's fair to criticize him for the turnovers. But when you look at the total package with Matthew Stafford, to me, he has the ability to overcome those turnovers. He has the arm talent to overcome it, where other quarterbacks that we tend to get into this conversation about don't necessarily have that ability to offset some of those mistakes that he makes. But I will say that he certainly does make some frickin' mistakes. Texas Niner saying at Jason Aponte, agreed. Detroit is a dumpster fire every season. Yes.
It's a culture thing.
Very true.
And everybody in the NFL knows it. That's why guys aren't lining up to go to Detroit no matter how much cap space they have or anything like that. Like, I've spoken to players that have said, I'd rather retire than go play for Detroit. That is not just something that people are saying on the internet. Like, it's how it's viewed in the league. Like, nobody – you go to Detroit and everybody used to make fun of people and say, oh, you waste away in Cleveland. No, you go to Detroit and you waste away in Detroit because they're not going to do anything to put a winning team on the field. And it's just over and over the same thing. Like, it just doesn't feel like the culture's right.
They need someone to come in and change that for them. It's so sad to have a franchise that should be a proud NFL franchise like Detroit, with the rich history that they have as an organization as a whole, and the reason that they have earned that historic franchise sort of view. But you got to get it back, and it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a coach coming in and completely revamping it. I don't know that Dan Campbell is that guy, but I feel for Detroit Lions fans is all I'm saying there. All right, getting forward into something that I want to pick your brain about. This is 49ers stuff. Let's forget about the Lions. Let's forget about the Rams. Let's talk about Jason's interpretation of the 49ers top needs by position. And this is a precursor to getting into the Senior Bowl conversation and talking about your observations there. So going into this Senior Bowl, as you went out there to observe those practices and that game, what was your opinion on where the 49ers needed their reinforcements most?
And this required a big shift in my attention. because I'm a skill position guy. I want to watch wide receivers on one-on-ones. I want to see running backs get the ball. I want to see tight ends run routes. I want to see quarterbacks, but none of those are really needs right now for the 49ers. So I had to dial it back and say, okay, what do the 49ers actually need? The 49ers need offensive line help. They need safety help. They need corner help. And I think those are the three that I was looking at the most, right? The offensive line is the one that I believe, and edge also. I believe they need edge as well too. I think they need a strong edge that can start plug and play right away right now this year. And at 61, I have identified at least somebody who could be there that I would be super excited if the 49ers were able to grab. But those would be the four positions right there. So the way that I started looking at it was, okay, you're looking at guys, but then you start to think which one of these guys is going to be around at 61. And how realistic is it that the 49ers can have that? And I believe that they've got at least two options at impact players at 61 at two different positions. And it just depends on which one of those guys are there on the board. One is an edge and one is a safety. So the edge that I'm going to talk about real quick is Arnold Ebukadi from Penn State. He's an edge, explosive, fast, bendy. He can literally start right across from Nick Bosa, be the guy that D Ford was before. Has to work on his power a little bit, but he was one of the most consistent edge guys there, and he definitely has a shot at being there at 61. Don't know if he boosted his stock enough this week, that week, to push him out of 61, but I would love him there at 61. And if not him, then I believe the young man's name is Jalen Petrie from Baylor. He's a safety. And what I loved about him was, the way that they move Kwaski and they move Ward down to the line, they bring them back, and he can do both. And I'm going to run off some stats real quick from him in Baylor. 14 games, 75 tackles, 18.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, 5 turnovers forced, 2 picks, 3 forced fumbles. He definitely will probably be there at 61. So those are two guys right there that you can have that can play in. Look, I know everybody loves Talanoa Hufanga, right? I get it.
Yes.
But I still think that his strong suit would be playing closer to the line. You have a guy like Petrie who can be versatile, just like they use Tart and they use Ward, while having him plug and play and having him cover deep. Hufanga struggles in deep, in deep coverage, and he's been targeted there. That's not an opinion. That's something that's just on film. People have done it. Many teams have done it. It's just something he needs to learn. Can he develop into that? Sure, but I still believe that he's more suited to be downhill. Like he doesn't need to be looking through coverages. You want him to play fast. You want him to get downhill and get to the ball carrier or on those blitzes, and I think that's where he'll be more successful. So I like either of those guys. But the real big thing the 49ers are going to have to do in the back end of this draft is address offensive line. Because I don't know how much they're going to do in free agency. And that's another thing we have to talk about. When we say positional need, it doesn't necessarily mean the 49ers are going to address it in the draft, right? Like there's safeties out there that they can sign right now that are plug and play. Tyrann Mathieu jumps out at you right there, like where he can do the same things that Tart did. And, edge, maybe they go and get somebody, but if you really want to stock it up with a guy who you can get right away at edge, I feel like Ebukadi is that. And I feel like Petrie is. Those are two starters immediately. Like they join this team and they start. And that's what you want from your second round pick. But the offensive line needs to be addressed one way or another because there are a lot of question marks. And is Lakin coming back? Is Alex Mack coming back? Are you going to retain Brunskill? What happens with McGlinchey's injury? Now you've got 4 offensive line positions that Trent Williams is already locked in and that there's nothing different there. But this offensive line could look drastically different. And where do you get that and where do you replenish that? Okay, you drafted Banks last year. You drafted Jalen Moore. Cool. You got to figure out what you got there. But there are some guys that kind of fit what they want to do. And that was the fun part was like digging into the O-line and saying, oh, wow, that guy could work in this offense. Oh, wow, that guy's kind of versatile. So I learned a little bit about myself in scouting. But the two guys for offensive line, I would say Matt Waletzko from North Dakota. He looks like Mike McGlinchey. Like 6'9", giant man, very powerful, fast, off the ball. He was getting worked a little bit early on in the week, but he got better with his pass reps. But I mean, the edge rushes and the interior linemen there, they were great in the Senior Bowl. So I'm not going to take too much off of him because Perion Winfrey was great, Mofi was great, Ebukadi was great, Jermaine Johnson was great from Florida State. But I feel like Waletzko got better as the week went on, and he looks like he can fit the same way that McGlinchey does with the run blocking. He only played left tackle at North Dakota, but I don't know if he can play right tackle, but I saw a lot of McGlinchey in his game, and I think that's somebody that could fit in that way. And then Cole Strange from Chattanooga. I actually, just before I got on here, I was looking on Twitter, and somebody actually posted some of his reps. But Cole Strange is a guard, but he was taking snaps as center. So what happens? Is he a guy that you can have as a center and a guard that'll flip back and forth? And he just looked really good at center, and he He got better as the week went on as well too. He's got a good base. He wasn't losing many pass blocking reps, anything like that. So those are the guys that I have that are actual positional needs. Two guys that everybody wants to talk about: Christian Watson, North Dakota State. Obviously they want that to happen, but I think his stock is just too far through the roof right now where he won't be around a 61. That's just going to be gone. But there is a wide receiver I do want the 49ers to look at, but can be had much later. And his name is Calvin Austin III from Memphis. What he looks like is Trent Taylor, but faster and more explosive, right? And and the thing is okay, Christian Watson, I don't want to say it's redundant, but Jawan Jennings is kind of in like that role. And it's like, where does he fit, right? But Calvin Austin, he actually can be that guy that they can catch screens and he looked like he had wiggle like a Debo way. Also, very good punt returner. So that's what I got real quick.
That's critical. So that's what I have is, we're in pretty good alignment on actual needs by position. I've got edge rusher 1, interior offensive line 2, and then speed wide receiver / return man as my number 3. As far as positional goes, for the 49ers, I want to bring in what Sean mentions here. I think is reasonable to expect that it's likely the 49ers will have a pick higher than 61 with the pick that Jimmy Garoppolo brings in. It's not a certainty, but it's a reasonable possibility. If that is the case, if the 49ers bring in a second rounder where they can use that second rounder on the edge, they can use the 61st overall pick on Petrie or one of the other safety options. If they let Tart go in this scenario, are any of those interior offensive line prospects that you mentioned going to be there in that third round range? Or will the 49ers miss out if they don't use one of their potentially 2 second round picks on an interior offensive lineman?
Well, Let's Go Strange probably will be day 2, like round 3 picks. So that's pretty safe. I don't really think that they boosted their stock too loudly. Like the scouts and the guys that we talked about, they liked him. But again, he started slowly and he worked his way up. And it wasn't like he was super flashy, right? It depends on what people are looking for. But it's about like how they fit the scheme that I really like very well. So I don't really think they're going to be that far off. Like they can be had in the third round. Like if you can get Cole Strange in the third or fourth round, that's a steal. And I would love that. He can fill in and then you can figure out what you have in front of him with Banks and Jalen Moore. But I love it because of his versatility, because I don't know if Brunskill's coming back either.
Yeah, you mentioned it. Brunskill may not be back. The 49ers may not look to extend him or bring him back. Alex Mack could decide to retire. It's entirely within the realm of possibility for a 36, 37-year-old center to do. And Laken Tomlinson may get re-signed at a far higher value than the San Francisco 49ers are prepared to offer for their left guard. And Mike McGlinchey is coming off of a quad tear, which could heal fine. Could not, right? So, the idea that 4 out of 5 of the offensive line positions could be in flux, it leaves the 49ers having to at least do their due diligence right now in all of these prospects. They may have a better idea of what's going on behind the scenes, but my guess is Alex Mack is still genuinely undecided as to whether he'll be back. Laken Tomlinson will genuinely explore free agency. The 49ers probably are looking to move on from Daniel Brunskill, and Mike McGlinchey has to actually heal and begin that process of coming back before they know. So there is a lot of uncertainty there for the 49ers.
Yeah, and if Alex Mack comes back, you can still draft Cole Strange and have him on the bench and have him ready to go next year. Like it's about locking down the position going forward. If Alex Mack wants to come back, he played very, very well, and I would be fine with that. I would have no problem with that. But the Laken thing is like, I think the 49ers want to stay in that 10 range. Somebody offers him 15. I think that's too rich for them. They'll let him walk. And then with Brunskill, he's restricted. But if somebody, and again, offensive line, they tend to overvalue guys like that because, his story, right? Like, and if he gets a little bit more, the 49ers don't have to match that. And then with McGlinchey, it's a 50-50 chance that he can come back and play at all, let alone at the level that he did. So a lot of, especially for a kid, right? For the kid who's going to be starting, like a lot of uncertainty that they need to lock down. So they need to be, I'm sure they're looking at the trenches because that's what they value anyway. Can't wait for them to sign, to draft a defensive tackle just to spite everybody, just because that's just what they usually do. So,
yes. 49ers fans will say, well, we need to finally use a high draft pick on a cornerback because, obviously the Niners will. And the 49ers will come back and say, I see your cornerback. I raise you defensive line, because that is how we build. No question about it. Texas Niner is optimistic about one of those spots, saying at Jason Aponte, I think Niners are hiding Aaron Banks because he's a stud. I hope that's the case because the Niners do need some people to step forward this year, whether that is Trey Sermon, whether that is Aaron Banks, whether that's the continued progression of Ambry Thomas or Diamador Lenore. You do need players from one season to the next to fill those vacancies, especially for the 49ers with so many starting roles up for grabs right now.
And I think people discount the fact that Aaron Banks might have been just here for Trey Lance, right? Like he's
Right.
not there. He's not there to protect Jimmy Garoppolo. He's there to be in unison with what they want to do with Trey Lance. So I wouldn't panic too quickly on that.
I would agree. We have one question very directly that asks you, Jason Aponte, who do you want us to draft at 61?
I would love Ebukadi. I just think that if you're looking at that pass rush and now you can take that pressure off Nick Bosa, you're going to start to get back to 2019 the way Ford and Bosa were like that year. And it's just he's strong, he's bendy, he's fast. It's just he was blowing past giant men the entire week. It was so good to see. And he comes from Penn State. Those guys work hard and I would love for them to take Ebukadi. It's not sexy, because everybody wants skill position players, but the defense and who knows who's going to be back, what's going to be the rotation, to be able to have a plug and play guy start right across from Nick Bosa and feel really good about that. It's something that would be huge for the 49ers going forward.
I totally agree. And it was Ford's health at that opposite position was what totally unlocked the San Francisco 49ers pass rush efficiency rates that we saw in 2019. If they can replicate that, it alleviates so many of the other stress points for the defense. But I like Harold here coming in. I disagree with the order in which he lists this out. Not that he's saying it needs to be in this order, but I do think that the 49ers would like to, through both free agency and the draft, come away with 2 additional corners, 1 additional pass rusher, and 2 additional offensive linemen that would all be in the conversation of relevant players. I could see them drafting an outside corner, potentially bringing in a veteran nickel to replace K'Wan Williams. I mean, you're definitely going to need someone at that nickel spot. I think it would be weird to go into next season with just Diamador Lenore penciled in as the starter there. The pass rusher is my top priority as well. I hope we spend our very first pick on a pass rusher, as you have laid out as well, Jason. And then I do think that we need those interior offensive linemen. Even if we brought back everyone and Aaron Banks took that next step, you've got to plan for Alex's max retirement, and taking someone early, allowing them that year, means that you can take them a round later in the draft and still get that developmental talent.
Come on, Washington, send us pick 11 so we can draft Derek Stingley. Stop being shady, man. Just do it. You want that guy on your team. Ron Rivera,
Pony up.
Make the deal happen.
I love it. I love it. Luke Luna coming in with the super chat. Shoe game immaculate. Love and respect, fam. Luke Luna, appreciate you coming in. Always appreciate your contributions. All right, I wanted to continue picking your brain, Jason, just about the experience of the Senior Bowl. I mean, how many times now have you been out there for that experience, and what is it like as an observer?
It was the second time, and last year was peak COVID, so things were a little bit different. I mean, Alabama wasn't very cognizant or worried about COVID then.
Yeah,
but
that wasn't stressing them out.
No, but it wasn't the same because it was full force. Everybody was back out. It was amazing. You get to see the scouts. Quick little nugget too that shouldn't close the door on Jimmy Garoppolo to Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin was at practice, spoke with Malik Willis for 45 minutes after practice, and the buzz around with all the scouts was he wants Malik, but not to start right away. I know a stopgap quarterback who can win you games, my friend.
I got one.
So, yeah. But that was really cool. He was there scouting his linemen. He definitely talked with Malik Willis. But the overall experience, getting to hang out with, rub elbows with Matt Miller, those guys later on, like at dinners and stuff like that, and just picking their brain on advancing in the media game, what you need to do, who you should be, saying hi to and everything. Got a chance to meet Jim Nagy in the press box and, get on the field for the game. It was an amazing experience. This was the first time that, it was so full with the practices. And then for the game, obviously they had people in the press boxes, but those were for, NFL Network, ESPN guys. So we got the chance to go up there real quick, but we had to leave. So the section that we were in last year was outdoors, but that was actually for fans. So they were just letting people just sit in the stands. I was able to use my pass and get down to the field, and that made it easy. I got a chance to see Saleh and got a chance to ask Perry and Winfrey a question in the press conference, man. And that was cool. Kind of gave me my little media moment. So, all I got to say is, who's the podcaster now?
I love it. It brings validity to you. Me having you on the show brings validity to me. It's just positive stuff here. I mean, talk about that from just a life experience sort of standpoint. I mean, how cool is that to be in that proximity, to be rubbing elbows with people, to overhear things, to actually be there when there are decisions being made that will help shape the next NFL season, that there are people out there changing the course of their franchise, observing the same players that you're there to observe. I mean, it's sort of wild in that respect.
It is, and I'll never get used to it. Like, I gave some of my assessments on certain people to scouts, and they were like, I saw the same exact thing. And I'm like, oh, cool. So okay, so I'm starting to get the hang of it. And, you're learning to scout the players' traits, and it's so easy to scout wide receivers, right? Are they getting open? How are they getting open? But the offensive line, those pass rushers, how do you see that translating, right? And that's all the stuff I'm learning on the fly and everything. And this is stuff that I dreamed of my whole life. And that's I'll never take it for granted. It was something that was super fun. All that hearing stuff. And I have a funny story real quick. I probably told it 10 times on my channel, but I'll tell the story here.
Bring it on. We love funny stories.
Yeah, you guys will get a good kick out of this. So we met up with a bunch of the media people at this place. I'm wearing the Salute to Service 49ers hoodie from this past year, the black one. Very sharp. I love those things. And I'm standing at the bar waiting to get a drink. And a gentleman walks up to me and he's like, hey, can I buy you a drink, man? And I'm like, yeah, for sure. So he orders up some shots, whatever, he gets it. And he starts to hand it to me. And he's like, so what's your role with the team? And I'm like grabbing the shot and I'm like, podcaster, YouTuber. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, give me that first. No give backs. Give me that first. Yeah. Take the shot. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm a podcaster, man. And he's like, no, he goes, because I just spoke to somebody who works for the 49ers and they're all wearing that same hoodie. And I was like, so I wore the hoodie. You thought I was involved with the team. I was like, well, it's time for you to learn something about Jason Aponte. Disappointment is not far around the corner. It just happened to you quicker. So I was so happy I could get the disappointment out of the way so fast. But I think that's really funny, as a lot of people were out there trying to create conversations, talk with people. And just because I happened to wear that hoodie that day, that gentleman who is actually from New Jersey, we got to talking after that, thought that he was talking with somebody from the team, and he didn't know he was just talking to little old me who's a dope
right. You were his inside scoop right there, man. You could have broke some news for him and he would have taken it to the bank.
I could have started the Jimmy Garoppolo first round pick thing right there. I'd be like, listen, we're working on getting a first from Washington.
Right. It's in the books. Hey, don't tell anybody yet, but we're right there on the cusp.
No, but tons of fun. And, you get a chance to go to a press conference. Unfortunately, they didn't allow Dan Campbell and Saleh. They just let some of the players come up. They let Kenny pick it up. And, I got talking to the Senior Bowl MVP. It was awesome because Perry on Winfrey was a dog. I have a feeling that the Packers are going to draft him, and I don't like it because he's very good. I don't like it at all. But, yeah, what an experience. And I'm just fingers crossed. I'm waiting on one more really, really big thing. Hopefully this combine approval comes through so I can go to Indianapolis and hit the combine next. But I'll be back in Mobile next year. But, man, I hope so. I'm fingers crossed. I got 4 more days left because the credentials close on the 18th.
That's huge. I hope that you do. I started looking into that process myself and couldn't make heads or tails of getting in there.
We'll talk about it. It's way easier. It's way easier than you think. Way easier than you think.
Well, we will connect offline because I want to look into that as well. I wish you the best of luck in getting out there. If I'm not able to make it, I'm just going to low that Truth 05 is right at Rob Schuh. Great content as always. In my opinion, hire Jason Aponte as a scout. And so that's what's going to, if I can't get in and you get in, you just ipso facto becoming our channel scout. And
absolutely,
we'll
Rob.
compensate you with drinks, beverages.
My motto would be, I'm just only going to scout good players and draft good players. I mean, it's as simple as that.
That's a good motto to have, my friend. That is a good motto to have. I got to keep my eye on the chat because right now I got a Rams guy, I got a Seattle guy. I love it when they come in. There's a little bit of trolling going on. There's a little bit of back and forth. I
think I have a feeling I know who this Rams guy is. Is it some sort of pro?
No, it is
Oh,
the Rams fan who's in there is someone I think that has been very respectful throughout. I think it's the Seahawks fan who's causing a little bit of trouble right
oh,
now, but it doesn't
he's one of the
seem
12.
it doesn't seem too violent or disrespectful, and therefore it can be allowed to continue
Who's gonna
going.
be
I got my hand on the timeout if need be.
who's going to be the quarterback in Seattle next year for when Russell leaves?
That's a good question.
Geno Smith season, baby.
Do you believe that either, if you had to bet on it right now, you think either Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers move teams, or do you think they're both blustering and nothing comes out of it?
I don't think Rodgers goes anywhere. I think Russ is gone.
You think Russ is gone?
Yeah.
Man, I hope that is correct. I really, really freaking
Tampa's going to push
do.
for him if they can't get Deshaun Watson and make heads or tails of what's going on with his legal situation.
That makes sense. That would be a great fit. No one throws a better deep ball than Russell Wilson, and no one appreciates a better deep ball than Bruce Arians.
Yep. I mean, the only thing that stinks is that he'll be in the NFC and you probably have to run into him, but you won't have to run into him 2 times a year in Seattle. I would like to see him get traded to the AFC, but where's the fit?
Yeah. Yep. It's tough. I agree with Avatar. This is my take on it right now. I think both stay until I see either one of them in a different uniform. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And I've been fooled too many times to count when it comes to big quarterbacks forcing their way out. So we shall see in that regard. All right. What was your impression of the deepest position group at the Senior Bowl before we move on from that topic?
Yeah, defensive line and edge. There was just a whole bunch of them. Jermaine Johnson, Winfrey, Mofi, Ebukadi. That's the thing that, like, when the linemen started to pick up and they started to win those reps, I was like, wow, that's impressive, because those guys on the other side have been getting it all week. And you can either just put your head down and say, man, they're just whipping me, or you fix it. And that's what Let's-Go did. That's what Strange did as well too. So yeah, it was a tough group of edge and interior linemen and defensive linemen. There's a lot of dogs coming out of that Senior Bowl.
That bodes well for the 49ers if they see it as you and I do, where they could fill in that position nicely with that top frickin' pick. All right, we're going to transition to talking about free agency, but I am going to bring in MILF Hunter's super chat here. And this is a solemn moment just to pay respects to Grant Cohn and to Grant's family, to Lowell Cohn. For any not aware, Grant posted to Twitter over the weekend that he lost his mother. And I just, my heart goes out to him in the most sincere way I can possibly communicate. That my love goes out to he and his family as they go through that. I just cannot even put myself in that situation to try to understand. But what little I know of loss, what little I know of going through something like that, I wish he and his father and everyone impacted within their family nothing but the best, and send my love in their direction. It's really all I can say about it.
Yeah, I don't offer advice with things that I've never gone through. I just offer an ear and positive energy and anything that it is that you need. So yeah, absolutely. Hurting for Grant, hurting for his family, and yeah, nobody ever wants to hear that for anybody.
Nope. No, you do not. That is one of those human things. Like, it doesn't matter to me how you may feel about Niners coverage or anything like that. That is just that's a tragedy. And I think we all as human beings can relate to that. Going on to a lighter topic there, talking about free agents. If you could make a wish and the 49ers were granted their top 3 free agent choices, do you have a couple of players in mind that you would like the 49ers to target, including, as I may say, any of their own soon-to-be free agents? Would you be looking at some outside free agents, some all-star free agents, their own free agents? Who you got your eye on, Jason?
Are we talking realistic, or are we just talking fantasy football? Because I can get fantasy football and just throw out a bunch of names.
I like the realistic angle. I like the idea of players that the Niners might actually be targeting that you think if you were in charge, you'd be targeting because you'd have a realistic shot of bringing them in.
Yeah. Okay. So first is going to be at running back. You don't have to draft a guy. You can sign Justin Jackson from the Chargers, who knows Anthony Lynn, and he would be great, especially with this new style and the new wrinkle that Lynn is going to bring in here. I love that idea. Justin Jackson, when pressed into duty, when Austin Eckler was injured, played very well. He actually has sure hands, and anytime that he's been called upon, he's been good. He knows Anthony Lynn. I think that is one where you can insulate that room if you cannot bring back Raheem Mostert, which I also am very in favor of. I would love to have Raheem back because I still feel like this offense is missing the home run threat that Debo is, but you want to lighten the load on Debo because Mostert can do those same things. But I love Justin Jackson, right? Okay. 2, it has. Oh, yeah, I think you're.
I love that pick, by the way. That mention of that player, absolutely love it.
He'll fit perfectly. Lynn will slide him in, and this is a very running back friendly offense. I love it.
And wouldn't be terribly expensive either.
No, I don't think so either. Right. And now sticking with not terribly expensive, and let's talk about it. A second tight end, and I have a perfect name, OJ Howard.
Ooh.
I want OJ Howard. Bet on the measurables. Start crushing people out of 22 personnel with him and Kittle. You can't cover them both. OJ Howard is just stuck behind Rob Gronkowski and Cameron Brate, but he's an athletic freak. And I don't think he's going to cost much either. I mean, he's coming off an injury, 2 years ago. Didn't really play too much here, but he would be incredible. You're not going to have him out there blocking, but he's certainly better than Ross Dwelly at this point. And I just think that you can really get creative with the way that you can get the ball. I mean, he's just I've always been a fan of the player, and I think, again, it's not going to cost them much to bring him in either.
I love that.
Yeah, and again,
I was just going to ask, because it's been thrown in a couple of times, hopefully this isn't stealing any thunder, but several people have mentioned Von Miller. Harold, I think, was the first one coming in. Is Von Miller a free agent that the 49ers should look for? He is a free agent. And the 49ers, we have said this, are looking for potentially drafting an edge rusher. Would you consider Von Miller as a free agent option?
At the right price. He's definitely going to test free agency, so he's not going out there for some team-friendly deal unless it has a bunch of incentives or something opposed to it, because he's instant plug and play. But it just depends on what he wants more than anything.
I like that call. All right, I interrupted you. You were about to come in with a third free agent option.
Yeah. I want Kyle Fuller at cornerback. I love it. 29 years old, Denver last year. I think he would be great. You start him right away with Emmanuel Moseley on the other side. I know everybody's excited about Ambry Thomas, but you don't have to continue to push that development and hope that things happen. Kyle Fuller is a guy who can play right away. I like it. I think that that's a good move for them as well, too. A veteran guy, and you don't really have to spend too much about that. Last year, I wanted them to target A.J. Boye. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They brought him in for a workout. That was all. But it would be hard to just say you're going to go into next year, and who knows what's going to happen with Jason Verrett, even though I kind of suspect that he'll be back as well, too. But depth is wealth, and if you have all these options, then you can really start to play around and get creative with the way you do coverages.
Man, I really love all three of those options. I specifically love Justin Jackson, right, to bring him in. That, to me, makes a ton of sense. I definitely want to bring in a veteran cornerback. To me, that's the most intelligent way to go about bringing in some quality depth in that room without investing one of the top picks, because I would rather save those top picks for the edge rusher that I believe is needed, and I think that's better value. If you're going to have a savvy veteran, I would rather that be in the secondary. If you're going to have an athletic freak rookie, I would rather that be in getting after the passer, something where physical skill set is the paramount in determining success rate there. And I love the idea of bringing in a secondary tight end. I don't know that I would have pegged O.J. Howard as the top of my list, but I did already have some other names on there. The gentleman coming out of Dallas is another one to have
Schultz
your name.
Is going to get paid, though. He's going to get a bag.
Yes. He may end up being well out of Schultz.
I was just thinking OJ Howard is just because of, like, you're betting on the measurables, like almost like, how Chris Kosura can get like an edge rusher to play well, like you think that can, and if not OJ Howard, another name is David Njoku.
Njoku is definitely another one to throw in there. I think you've hit on something there where you have potential value in something the Niners have very clearly been looking for years now, right? They have flirted with a lot of these not premier level tight ends, but second level, just below that cusp. And those are a couple of names to keep your eyes on. I went a completely different route on this one. I love all three of yours, and they would become my primary targets in free agents bringing in. I went the route of, for the 49ers, the most important players that they need to bring in are the players they need to bring back. To me, if I've got to prioritize three free agents, it's Laken Tomlinson, it's DJ Jones to give me the excuse to show my DJ Jones barbecue sauce, and then it is Raheem Mostert. And I know that people are probably going to fire me in the comments for saying it, but no one adds an element to our run game in the same way as Raheem Mostert. And I am willing to roll the dice on a healthy or unhealthy season because of what you get when he is healthy. I think it falls more on the team to limit his touches so that, he doesn't end up injuring himself as quickly in the coming season. But I think barring Miami overpaying to bring him in, to me, that would be a big time priority.
Yeah, and they absolutely would, because you're still going to use Debo, just not as much. Elijah Mitchell is still there. You've seen him take 25 carries. I mean, if you even whittle that down for him, he becomes more efficient. I love it. I want Raheem Mostert back as well too, and I think that it's way closer than people think about him coming back because he wants to be here. I mean, he's been injured the whole season, and he's been tweeting about the team, being around the team. He obviously loves it, and let's not discount the fact that this is the team where he got his start. And that's what Jason Verrett was talking about was I feel indebted to them because they took a chance, and I think that Mostert's going to feel the same exact way. So, yeah, it just realistically what's going to happen, and you're at that age where you got to take a bag if it's there now because that's your last shot probably.
Totally agree with that. You do have to take that bag when it gets presented to you. I do just want to take a moment. We are here at the 1 hour mark. I wanted to say that you should like this video. If you enjoy the content, please do hit that like button. Please consider subscribing to the entire channel. But more importantly, there is information below on this fine gentleman, how you can follow him on Twitter, how you can find that Sprint Right Option podcast, how you can find it on YouTube. All that information is down below in the description of this video. So go give this fine gentleman, Jason Aponte, a follow as well, because you guys are putting out phenomenal content over there. Just wanted to take a moment to say that and to say thank you to those in the chat. Also, always calling for people, as our Mob Nation did, to sack that like button, faithful.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, Rob. And I love doing this, man. But yeah, definitely make sure you did the point on point. Like you actually pointed to I still can't. I'll never get that right. Like
it took me a while to figure it out, and because it's backwards, and so you think you're like, oh, it's going to be the other direction, but no, you just got to go. Yeah. So I have equated with, well, the map's on that side of me, and that's where he is. So yeah, it took a little while to actually get that.
I'm still never going to get it.
I tell you, practice makes perfect. I'm telling you. All right, so let's transition into a little bit about Miami because we're talking about it. Right before the hiring, Mike McDaniel came out and said there were no red flags for him going into the Miami organization. Now you have reports by the NFL saying that it's most likely, if they can definitively state that Ross did offer to pay $100,000 per game that they tossed, that he could be removed from ownership. Roger Goodell stating as much, that you can remove an owner with a majority vote within the NFL. That'll be a freaking train wreck to watch. But now you're getting reports that, well, Ross's camp is going to claim that he was simply joking in that instance. So this goes back to me about Mike McDaniel and his statement of there are no red flags in the organization. Do you think that Mike is regretting his choice at all right now with all that flying around? Or do you believe he just keeps his head down and doesn't worry about it?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, look, no matter what happened with Brian Flores, nobody can ever make the claim that he's not a good coach. And no matter what was said, and I think that he still walked out of it with that reputation. Sure, he has a reputation of maybe rubbing people the wrong way, maybe being a little too hard, but the results were there. He had 2 back-to-back winning seasons. And the part that has everybody upset is when Brian Flores becomes available, he's the number one head coach on the list that it should be prioritized over everybody, over Dabble, over McDaniel, over everyone. And literally people should have been lining up right away to get their hands on him, right? That's the problem. So for me, I don't think that it's a big deal. The Stephen Ross saying that he's joking thing is a problem, though. You're basically admitting you said it. Now, tone and context, we can't hear that, but you said it. And you know what? I would not put it past you to say that you meant it. So for you to just say, oh, no, I was just joking. Does Brian Flores look like the type of guy you want to joke with? We saw him at the Senior Bowl last year, and they said, do you want to ask him a question? I was like, absolutely not. He's going to rip my face off. I was like, what is wrong with you? The man has probably never joked in his entire life, and that's the guy you want to joke about losing with? That's BS, man. He knows what he said. And you know what? I hope they investigate it and find out.
I do too. I'm sick of this NFL owners being completely immune to everything, where that's just not the case. Yes, I get that these billionaires don't want to feel as if they might be next. I understand that, but it doesn't mean that it's an excuse. It doesn't mean that it's a reason that we should actually listen to. We are the customers for this product. So eventually what our voices say matter above all else. Those billionaires only have billion-dollar valuations because of our fandom, right? It is all of these small fish within the huge pond that makes them as rich as they are when it comes to this sport. So we have to speak up when we see things that we don't like. And to consider changing the competitive nature of the NFL to get to a point where you have obvious tanking seasons like you do in the NBA would be just unacceptable for me. It's too violent of a game to really have teams tanking. Yeah, you kind of make the shift from veteran players down to young players, and that changes your likelihood of winning. But the guys who are out on the field are still generally competing with everything they got. So for me, that's the most important thing to come out of all of this is the integrity of the league. And if the league does not investigate into this, does not take this opportunity, it would be a travesty in my book. I think both Ross and Adam Snyder should be out of the league. That would be the way in which I would approach it if I could.
Dan Snyder, right?
Dan Snyder, yes. I'm thinking Adam Snyder, one of our guards back in the day for the 2011 Niners.
No, I mean, yeah, there's just the problem really becomes is who in the boys club is going to disrupt the boys club.
Right.
Because if it comes down to a majority vote of coaches, how many of these guys are going to oust one of their own? Remember, the commissioner works for the owners. And that's the thing. That brings in the discussion that Flores is complaining about at this point. And I think that it's a very fair thing to talk about. Now, do I know details? Obviously not. But I think that's the part that's going to become the hardest is how many of these guys that are in the boys club that are friends with, they're all friends and they're all lighting cigars with $100 bills is going to push out one of their own. And I don't know if that's going to be something that's likely. I mean, in the NBA, we've seen instances of this, but with like gross racism and on tape, like things that were not accusations, literal things that were said, and you had to make a move, right? With this, right. It's an accusation, one that probably feels valid at least, but still you have to have those guys basically disrupt what they've built in terms of covering each other's asses, and who are going to be the guys that are going to switch on that?
It's true, because it is still a he said type of an argument, even though you have an additional witness apparently, which is what makes me so skeptical. Is Stephen Ross coming out and saying, no, I didn't say this. And then someone's like, oh, well, technically there was actually a witness that heard you say, oh, well, I was kidding. Like the idea that you shifted, if you had initially come out and said, yeah, I said it, but I was kidding, maybe I believe you, probably not, but maybe I believe you. But when you change your story because there is a witness, it's like, come on.
Got you. Yeah.
We know.
Why David Sir coming in
Flores? At Rob Schuh. Subscribe to you both. Good work, gentlemen. Looking forward to an awesome 2022 season. We are looking forward to that as well. Let's transition to something a little bit happier. The 49ers Super Bowl odds just keep climbing. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was people fearing the retirements of Sean McVay and Aaron Donald, but overnight, the San Francisco 49ers climbed in the ranking where they now have the fourth best odds at 11-1 through somebody's sports book and the second best odds to win the NFC. Is this hype too early for you, Jason, or is this just right? Should the 49ers be favored in this way?
Yeah, it's still a little too early. We have no idea where other quarterbacks are going to go, what this team is going to look like, who's going to be brought in. But I think the general thinking is, well, this team was plays away from that, and now they're adding a dynamic quarterback who can open things up a little bit more. Why wouldn't you be as bullish on this team? And that's not wrong. I just feel like we have to wait until this roster is built out. I have every bit of confidence that the 49ers will be able to return a team that it will have similar aspirations and can reach those heights. It may not be the same cast of characters because there's so many free agents that are going to be out there, and who knows who they draft, who they bring in, and who's going to be a contributor from last year's draft. But it is a little bit early just because we have no idea where other teams are going to, what happens if Deshaun Watson gets cleared of everything and he ends up in Tampa Bay? Where do those odds go after that?
Right.
What happens if Russell Wilson gets moved or stays there and Aaron Rodgers gets moved to like Denver? Where does that get like? So we have a lot of time for all of those things right now at this point. So I think that it's just general thinking as this is a team that was this close. Now they're going to add this quarterback who has this, arm and is as fast as a gazelle. Now only things can go up from there. And I think that's just not a casual way of looking at it, but it's just a general way to look at it.
No, I think you're right. Like, I'm not rushing out to lay down money on the San Francisco 49ers
at
that 11-1. Right?
Yeah,
like,
I think it's 1,400. Yeah, plus 1,400, right?
Yeah, that it was plus 1,400 just moments ago and then continued to climb. I have Akash tweeting it out that it had climbed as high as 11-1 for the 49ers, plus 1,100 on that one. That brings them above the Cowboys into that fourth place. But to your point, there's just too much that has to happen. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers gets his bluff called yet again and stays in Green Bay, you would think that the Packers, depending on their cap hell situation, might be favored at or above the San Francisco 49ers because they'd have a proven quarterback. If anyone stumbles into that quarterback scenario in Tampa Bay, again, to your point, that would seem to bump them up there. I agree. There's just too much that needs to shake out before these percentages, these numbers are realistic in who actually has the best odds. Got to do a little time out for somebody in there. All right, let's get to the last topic. All in for the ring. The Rams clearly, like you said, had a different way of cooking the feast, but it did end up as a beautiful 11-course meal that, at times looked like it may not work in their favor, but at the end of the game, they end up with the Super Bowl ring. Do you believe that the 49ers need to borrow any of the principles that the Rams have operated on in recent years? Or have the 49ers just pursued their own way of cooking their own feast and they stick to it?
Yeah, I don't think they really have to because it's out of the ordinary for them. They value their picks and the Emmanuel Sanders move, that wasn't like a huge thing, right? Like it wasn't like they went out and got like a top tier receiver. They got a receiver that fit and they felt could help them win. And you know what? They almost got it. But I think they're going to stick with what they've been doing. They love what they're doing with their scouts. What Peters is doing, how they've been building in the draft. They seem to be high on their guys. So I don't think that they have to change anything like that. But I will say this again: if in 2019, if you feel like you're one player away, make the move and make the team better. It doesn't mean that you have to go out there and just say, oh, well, this player is available for trade. Yeah, just trade the farm for him. Oh, this player is available. Trade everything for him. If it's going to be a complementary piece that can change the momentum of the team and push you in a different direction, then that's what I think I want the 49ers to do. Just depends on what the compensation is.
I love that mentality because I agree that I don't see any big swings that the Niners need to make or really could make in free agency as it stands right now. during the typical free agent period. There could be a lot of value to be had. The San Francisco 49ers may be seen, much like Las Vegas is looking at them with these odds, they may be seen as a destination for some of these free agents that don't get scooped up with the big money, who then decide, well, if I'm going to take less money, I want to go somewhere where I have a legitimate shot at a ring. So they may view the 49ers as that sort of a destination. But I agree, the most likely scenario where the Niners should borrow a page from the Rams book is during the season next year, when you've already established what type of team you are and you get closer to that trade deadline. You may have an opportunity to give up some assets to pursue that one player who's going to help get you over the hump this year. And in that case, I do think it's okay to be aggressive. I was all on board with the Emmanuel Sanders trade. I thought that was reasonable value that the Niners gave up. It didn't work out for them, but I appreciated the swing at the plate. That was the way in which I viewed that move, and would view it again if they were to do it in 2022 as well.
100%. And again, it's all about identifying where it is that you need to get strengthened. And the Emmanuel Sanders thing paid off immediately, and it went down to those guys, and they all credit what they learned from him too as well. So it was all win-win. I mean, it wasn't win-win-win, but it was win-win at least.
No doubt. All right, this is a bonus question, completely off the cuff here, but I'm just sort of obsessed with Allen Robinson and his career since leaving the Jags, right?
Don't have me with a good time.
Yeah, I'm telling you. So what's your sense of Allen Robinson? Do other people see his value as well? And is he going to get a bag of money that looks a little bit too large for the production that we've seen from him recently? Or is he going to be a value find for someone?
No, I think he's going to get paid, but I think he kind of cost himself a little bit of money this year, just because obviously it wasn't the best situation, but his body language told you that he didn't want to be there, and he just wasn't running the routes the same way. And, you can tell because Justin Fields and Mooney had a much better connection, and you would have thought, well, look, Allen Robinson's about to play football with the best arm he's ever played with, even though Justin Fields is a rookie, and I think that's pretty easy when you look at Blake Bortles, Mitchell Trubisky, Nick Foles, some of the other quarterbacks that he's had. But he just didn't want to be there anymore. And I think he had a little bit of buyer's remorse on his own, because he had a chance to go to Green Bay, and he didn't. He chose the Bears. So I mean, could you imagine what would have been like if Devontae Adams had Allen Robinson across from him? I don't want to imagine that. Now, a sleeper destination for Allen Robinson is actually back to Jacksonville.
Ooh,
Jacksonville actually has a bunch of cap space. They need a guy. He didn't necessarily want to leave, because he hated it there. It was, obviously he took more money, but he can go back. He can play with Trevor Lawrence. You got to expect that the offense is going to be at least a little bit better, because it can't be any worse. And I think that they would be inclined to bring him back. I think so. That's like a little bit of a sleeper, but I don't think that he's going to get the money that he probably thinks, but he's not going to be a value. Like, people still see the talent because it's still there. And I still think that he's one of the most undervalued, underrated receivers in the league. And man, I wish he would be a 49. I wish.
Me too. I just hope that there's a bunch of idiots out there in front offices that just decide he's not worth it, and he slides far enough for him to consider a prove-it deal with the San Francisco 49ers. But I know I am probably smoking something when I say that might happen.
It's fantasy football.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's right. But I agree with Milf Hunter here in his implication here on Brandon Ayuk. Deep ball me, please. So I think it was, did he tweet that out or send it out on Instagram? No. One of the two. And so he puts that out there, deep ball me, please, in regard to Trey Lance. I certainly believe that Brandon Ayuk is going to be the beneficiary of taking considerable more deep shots. I would think that Brandon Ayuk will. I would think that Debo will. I would think that George Kittle, all three should benefit from it. I am interested to see how the 49ers fill in the rest of that receiving room, because I think that it's entirely likely that it's only 3 out of the 6 that were on the team this year make it back. Obviously, Debo and Ayuk are still under contract. Jawan Jennings is that exclusive rights free agent, right. So that's basically a lock as well. Mm-hmm. But I would tend to think that the Niners have to fill in those other 3 spots.
Calvin Austin, like I said, in the draft, there's guys. There's going to be some guys that they'll pick up off the scrap heap, or not the scrap heap, like, because that sounds bad. I'm talking about like value wide receivers.
Right,
I'm not talking about like it won't be Devontae Adams. Like, it's not going to be that.
Yeah, don't get your hopes up on Devontae.
Right. But they'll figure it out. And you know, I would be shocked if they didn't draft a wide receiver in this draft also.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great, to me, if they do not invest in a speedier wide receiver who can also be a return man for this team, it would just be a huge miss. Like, this team has operated without a dedicated return specialist for too long. When you look around the league and you see these lighter, slimmer framed guys that are adding value to their respective franchises on cheap deals and filling a roster spot, to me, that is everything the Niners need this offseason.
Calvin Austin, baby. I couldn't believe it. He was taking punts and actually advancing them. I'm just like, that's possible? Unbelievable.
You can get positive yards out of that particular situation?
You don't have to fair catch it or just let the ball roll. You can move forward. Jesus, what a development.
Man, I'm telling you, I'm excited. I am freaking excited for the offseason. I am excited for every step of the way that is going to come for the San Francisco 49ers before they even get to play football again. This has been a fantastic show. Again, if you're here right now, if you're one of the 200 folks watching at the close, hit that like button on your way out. Go find that description down below and go follow my man, Jason. We will definitely be back on here again, but I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for being on, Jason. It is always a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. You don't have to thank me. This is so fun. You know that I'm down. You know, you just gotta let me know. As long as I'm not like traveling from like LA to Mobile and I'm like wiped out or anything like that. But if I'm here home, I got you, bro.
We'll make it happen. Last minute edition, MILF Hunter coming back in just to give a shout out to an ex-Niner. Trent Taylor looked like a Pro Bowl punt returner. I was losing my shit watching Trent Taylor. I was having a good time yelling at the screen, just, wanting him to have success. I was bummed that he didn't get that ring. I did find solace in it going to Stafford, even though it was with the Rams, but that would have been sweet to see Trent Taylor take one home.
And Calvin Austin, think Trent Taylor, but faster and more explosive.
That is a positive note to end the show on. Jason has got us tempted, and we will continue to bring in updates on free agents, on possible draft picks. You name it, we will have it in this offseason. Again, go follow Jason. The information is below. I will be back for my mailbag episode tomorrow at 5 p.m. Look for me to reach out on Twitter at the Left Schuh to get those 49ers questions tomorrow morning for that mailbag. Again, Jason, such a pleasure to have you on. We will do this again in the near future. Until next time, cheers, Niner faithful.